Word. Each show's keyword will be different, and you will have 9 chances to get that keyword to enter. You do not need all the keywords to win at all. John Miller doesn't need a credential. He could just walk up to Chaser, and they'll let him in for this press conference here. But John Miller, longtime play-by-play voice of the San Francisco Giants, been here since 1997. But he's a Bay guy, Hayward High School, College of San Mateo, you name it. And so we'll start our conversation with John Miller about the Oakland A's situation. John, good morning. Welcome to the Morning Roast here on 95.7 The Game. I got Alan Stiles in for Joe Shasky. I'm Bonte Hill, and it's good to talk to you. And first and foremost, man, the sadness of the Oakland A's leaving. I know you got your first crack at Major League Baseball with the Oakland A's in the 1974 World Series. Could you discuss that and some of the memories you have with the Oakland A's and just what you're feeling right now with this new decision that it looks like it's a foregone conclusion that they will be in Las Vegas?
Yes, and let me just start with good morning to you. Thanks for having me on. And I am in L.A. with the Giants, getting ready for this series, the first of the year for the Giants in L.A. The whole schedule is so much different this year, so they're playing the Dodgers a lot less than they have been, and this is their first visit to L.A., and they don't play the Dodgers again until almost the very end of the season.
That's wild.
Play a little more than half of their full schedule of games against the Dodgers in the last 10, 11 days of the whole season.
That's
so
crazy.
These games are important, even though it's not quite mid-season yet, because they have so few of them. So we'll see. And it seems like the Giants are in good shape to meet the Dodgers because they're hot and yet they're banged up a little bit. But even more chance for some of these young guys to get in there. And so far this first half, I think some of the brightest moments for the Giants have been with the young guys, 8 of whom have made their Major League debuts this year. So, but it is sad for me. I grew up in Hayward and a Giants fan. The Giants were the only team. We had one big league team, and the Giants sort of were my introduction to baseball, and Russ Hodges and Lon Simmons were the broadcasters who described the exploits of Willie Mays and Orlando Cepeda, Willie McCovey, and Juan Marichal, Gaylord Perry, all of the future Hall of Famers that were on that ball club. And especially with Willie Mays, you couldn't help but be a fan when you saw what he was capable of doing. I remember thinking of him as a 10-year-old that he was like a superhero. He could do anything. And that was not far removed from the truth. So in 1968, the A's came to town. And the great thing for me was, as a Giants fan, the Giants were a National League team. And now the A's came in, and they were an American League team. For the first time, we got to see American League teams face-to-face. And the second time the Yankees came into town, and at that time, 1968, it was before the second major expansion. There were 4 new teams that came into Big League Baseball the same year in 1969, 2 in each league, and the leagues were divided into divisions for the first time. Through 68, in 1968, in fact, it was still a 10-team league, the American League, the National League, a 10-team league. You played every team in the whole league an equal number of times. The schedule consisted of 18 games against every team. So 3 visits to each city. New York, name a city, you went there 3 times. So the Yankees, when they came in the summertime, I thought, man, I grew up with Willie Mays, and I really want to see Mickey Mantle play, because Mantle and Mays were the premier center fielders, and back in the 50s, Duke Snider was on that list, and they all played in New York City at the time before the Dodgers and Giants moved west. So I went to the Coliseum and got to see Mickey Mantle play, and he hit a home run, which was kind of a thrill. I'll never forget it. He was batting left-handed, and I think it was John Blue Moon Odom was on the mound for the A's, and he hit a home run in the right field. And a fan was kind enough to look that up. I told that story in the air one night, and a fan looked that up and sent me all the details as to what game it was and who the pitchers were. And I hadn't even remembered, because I saw Reggie Jackson hit a lot of home runs. Mm-hmm. Reggie was a young, budding superstar at the time in 68. That was his first full season in the big leagues. The next year, he would be chasing the Babe, at the All-Star break, he had 38 home runs. You remember that? 1969?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. What a year. And so Reggie also hit a home run in that same game. So I had not remembered that two future Hall of Famers would go deep in that game. So anyway, so that was kind of the fun thing. But the thing that's interesting to me is now people sort of want to talk about Giants fans, A's fans. Never the twain shall meet. Well, I was a fan of both. Why not? The A's were a team that was real close to where I lived, and I still was a Giants fan, hugely.
So, John, you approve of the split cap, huh? So you approve of the split cap then, John?
Well, I approved of having two teams in the Bay Area where you see all the teams.
Yeah.
So it's a different schedule now. Now we all play all the teams every year, so it's not that as big a deal as it was at that time. But anyway, the A's were kind of a young team, and they had some great pitching, and they were a team on the rise when they arrived in '68, and the Coliseum was the modern ballpark, the new and brand new ballpark. I had already been there before the A's arrived. They had a soccer team, the Oakland Clippers, in the National Professional Soccer League that existed at the time, and they were a really good team. And then, of course, the Raiders played there. They moved over from Frank Ewell Field. So that's what I saw at the Coliseum. And then the A's came in. So I used to go and sit in the bleachers in right field before Mount Davis was kind of the monstrosity got constructed. But I sat under the overhang of the second deck in right field in the corner of the bleachers where there was nobody alongside you or behind you. And usually one of my buddies from high school, from Hayward High, would come with me. And we would broadcast the games onto a tape recorder from out there.
That's great.
And when people would inevitably start sitting nearby, we would tell them what we were going to do, and just to give them a forewarning so that we wouldn't be bugging them. And but they seemed to enjoy it. So anyway, so I have a lot of fond memories of those A's and watching guys like Reggie Jackson and Catfish Hunter, and later on Vida Blue came along, Ken Holtzman, Raleigh Fingers. They developed. He was a sort of a swing man, a starter, reliever, spot starter, whatnot, who became the closer. And so we watched that club go. And then when they were on the road, they would televise games from Yankee Stadium, Tiger Stadium, and all these places that we never got to see following the Giants. The Giants never played in those places. There was no such thing as interleague play. So anyway, so for all those reasons and many more, it's really sad even if you just grew up in the Bay Area, not much less if you're a diehard A's fan. It's just a sad turn of events to see the A's set up now to leave the Bay Area.
You hit the nail on the head, John, and I'm just sitting here listening. I mean, I could listen to you just talk about all this stuff all day. I did want to ask you just about the Giants, and you talk about how excited you are about the rookies, but I'm gonna make you choose. Is there a rookie that you're the most excited about that you've either seen play already or that is on the way up?
Well, I'm still going to give you a two-part answer. But of the guys we've seen so far, I'm very excited about, and I'm talking about from what we've seen so far, not their advanced billing or anything like that, but what we've seen. The guy that has been better than advertised, better than expected so far, is Patrick Bailey, the catcher. Mm-hmm. And we were told that he had some issues as a hitter, particularly as a right-handed hitter, because he's a switch hitter, that he was a little more challenged batting right-handed, facing left-handed pitching. Well, so far, he's done great batting right-handed. So that's been a surprise, and everything else about him has been as good as expected, and maybe even better. His defensive abilities, his ability to handle the pitching staff, ball blocking, throwing. He made a throw the other day in St. Louis that was just remarkable. It kind of reminded me, and since I'm sort of going back nostalgically back into the early days of the Oakland Athletics, I remember when the Yankees would come in, and they had a young catcher back in the 70s, Thurman Munson.
Oh, yeah.
And, Munson was a great player and a leader on that team. But Munson was not a classic thrower. He seemed to break every rule as a thrower. His idea was to get rid of the ball. There was a steal attempt to get rid of the ball as fast as possible. He'd throw it sidearm. He'd throw it underhanded. He'd just get rid of it as fast as possible. The ball would sail. It would fly. It would, no telling where it was headed. But he got rid of it so quickly that often he was able to throw out a guy because of that. If the ball ended up in the vicinity of second base close enough, somebody could catch it and tag the runner. So the throw that Bailey made the other day in St. Louis, and I don't know if you remember the one I'm talking about, I think it was the young guy, Walker, trying to steal.
Jordan Walker, yeah.
He was off balance. He got rid of it, kind of a sidearm throw, and it tailed a little bit to the first base side a second, but it ended up right there where Crawford was able to reach down and, as he caught the ball, tag the guy. So Bailey's been very impressive. The guy I'm the most excited about, and we haven't seen him yet, is Kyle Harrison. And he's still developing. He needs to throw more strikes. He needs to. And I always remember Randy Johnson, the big unit, now in the Hall of Fame. As a real young guy, we all knew about the great arm, and he was 6'11", and he was so tall and so intimidating. But he was wild. And I remember talking to him at that time. He was still in Seattle with the Mariners, and he said that it was about not just repeating the delivery, but he was so tall, such long legs, long arms. There was so much to his delivery that he would get off kilter with his mechanics, and he would not know what the problem was. And he said finally there came a time where he'd miss real badly with a couple of pitches and know, okay, I'm off kilter, and here's the problem. He would be able to identify what it was himself and then make that adjustment and correction in the middle of an inning without a pitching coach or anybody having to go out and tell him that. So that was a big turning point. So I think that's, for any young pitcher, I think that's a turning point where you are so self-aware that you can determine that yourself. So that may be where Harrison is right now. But it sounds like his control issues have gotten a lot better, and as he's gone along this year. So because he was walking the whole lineup there for a while early in the season, but not any longer.
John Miller, of course, National Radio Hall of Famer back in 2014. He was inducted to the National Radio Hall of Fame. Ford C. Frick Award winner in 2010. They call it Giants game since 1997, but has been involved in the game of baseball since the late 60s here. Follow him on Instagram at John Miller SM Giants. Your Instagram page is dynamic. And you brought up Thurman Munson. This is a conversation for another day. How the heck is Thurman Munson not in the National Baseball Hall of Fame? I don't get that one, because Buster Posey kind of reminds me of Thurman Munson when you see the numbers and the captain and the leadership role. But you're down there at Dodger Stadium for the first time all season. Is there any Giants-Dodger games that sticks out to you? Which one stands out? Because they've got a long history. You've covered a lot of great games between these two clubs. Is there one game that sticks out to you, John?
Well, there have been so many, as a kid growing up with the Giants and Dodgers, the first game I ever saw in person at Candlestick Park, my dad and my godfather took me to Candlestick to see the first Giants-Dodger matchup of the 62 season.
Wow.
And at that time, that was the first year of expansion. They were going to play 18 games, so that was the first one. And the thing I'll never forget about it was that the Giants beat the Dodgers 19-8, and they took a 19-3 lead into the ninth inning. And the Dodgers scored 5 runs against Billy O'Dell, the Giants' starting pitcher, and they even got the bullpen up. And I told that story in the air one night, and a lawyer, was at the public library in San Francisco in the microfilm record. So this is a while back now. And he looked that game up in the Chronicle archives at the library. And he made Xerox photos of the game story by the Hall of Fame writer Bob Stevens, who covered the Giants, and the box score and whatnot. And I was so appreciative to that fan, because it was a great keepsake of my first ever game. I was so impressed with what I saw that I not only remembered the score, I remembered the game totals. The Giants had 19 runs on 12 hits.
That's incredible.
The Dodgers walked 10 guys, made 3 errors. The Dodgers out-hit the Giants. They had 8 runs on 15 hits, and yet they lost the game by 11 runs. Felipe Alou hit the first home run I ever saw in person. And Willie Mays hit a home run, and I thanked Willie years later for hitting a home run the first game I ever saw. I said, I don't even know how you knew I was there. But, so anyway, and Jimmy Davenport hit a home run too. But I even remembered the paid attendance, 32,819 on a Tuesday night in mid-April.
Wow.
So the amazing thing was that in the story that Bob Stevens wrote, it said that they asked Alvin Dark if he was a little upset in a blowout that he had to get his bullpen up. And he said, no. Billy was just trying to throw strikes and get the game over with and get the guys in the clubhouse. I knew he wasn't tired because he'd only thrown 150 pitches, 150.
Wow.
And what he meant was he'd thrown 150 going into the ninth inning. And he threw 22 more in the ninth inning. He threw 172 pitches in that game. Now, people always talk about, we didn't even know pitch counts in those days. They didn't even keep pitch count. Well, apparently they did. And so did the writers. So, and Billy O'Dill threw 172 pitches and went on and made 40 starts that year and won 19 games and lost 14 games.
So John, the other night when a kid from Stafford threw 156, you probably just John said, they did that all the time back in my day. What's the big deal here?
Well, I remember when I was in Baltimore, and Ben McDonald was the great pitcher in college at the time, and the Orioles had the first pick in the draft. And he's pitching. They drafted him. Now he's pitching in the College World Series. And Skip Bertman, the coach at LSU at that time, was McDonald's coach. And he threw 157 pitches in a game. And then 2 days later, he came on in the 7th inning as the closer and pitched the last 2 2/3 innings. 2 days after he'd thrown 157 pitches. And the Orioles are watching in horror at the ballpark as this number 1 draft choice that they just drafted is being, it looked to them anyway, being abused on the mound. And Frank Robinson said, somebody give me my gun, give me my rifle. As they showed a picture of his coach in the dugout because he wanted to shoot him. It's like, are you kidding me? This guy with such a great future, you're using him like that? And it turned out, Ben McDonald, I asked him years later about it, and he said, well, that wasn't such a big day. I had in high school, as a senior in high school, in the state tournament in Louisiana, I pitched a 14-inning game, and I pitched 210 pitches in 14 innings. I went the distance in high school. And then the next day, that was the semifinal, we won the next day the final state championship, and I came in and pitched the last 3 innings of that the next day. So... and then, McDonald, after he got to the big leagues for a while, eventually broke down and had to have the Tommy John elbow reconstruction surgery. And I would have thought maybe it happened in that College World Series with LSU that we had seen, but it probably happened while he was still in high school. He was a really young guy. So I think that a lot of these injuries do occur that way, and guys grow up differently than they used to in, say, Billy O'Dell's day, where they played catch all the time and they threw all the time as kids growing up. Now, if it's football season, you play football. If it's basketball season, you play basketball, and then you start playing catch and whatnot, playing baseball. So the way guys are raised and the way they throw, I think, have changed a lot over the years, and former big league players often went home after their playing days were over and became high school coaches. Now you've got to have that teaching credential and whatnot, and so that doesn't happen that often anymore. And you may have guys in high school coaching situations, or even in the youth leagues, the summer leagues, the travel leagues, whatnot, who don't have the depth of knowledge and experience that you'd like to have coaching these young guys, because there's a lot of guys getting Tommy John surgeries who are in high school, who are 15 years old, 14 years old, and whatnot, who are pitching one day for one team, and then they're with another travel team the next day, and they're the catcher. You know, can you imagine that pitching a full game and then being the catcher and doing all that the next day?
That's incredible. It's incredible. John, a lot of our roasters, a lot of people listening on YouTube, a lot of people listening on the radio are saying they can listen to you read them a book, Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs, and be satisfied here. So I think people are loving you right now. They would love to read. They say, one guy said, you can sell them cigarettes. They don't even smoke. That's how good your voice is right now. But it's good to hear you on these airways. Have a great call down there at Dodger Stadium. We're excited for this series. Giants 2.5 back of the Dodgers. Dodgers coming back to the back. The Arizona Diamondbacks red hot. We'll see them in about a week here at Oracle Park. John, thanks so much for the time and the stories. We got to do it again very, very soon, John.
All right, and I appreciate you having me on. I wanted to also mention I did a podcast
with Brett Boone. Brett Boone
this week, and apparently the second part of that gets released. I don't know how people access podcasts, but wherever you can access them, it'll be there. When we were talking stories about things that we recall, so. And you know, Brett Boone's been through a lot of stuff. He was a really outstanding player. So it was a lot of fun. So people might enjoy it. Baseball fans might enjoy it.
The Brett Boone podcast, an Odyssey original. We had Brett on yesterday. He said it went 2 hours and 10 minutes, and he felt like it could have gone on another 2 hours. So he got you rolling there, and we heard the interview was great. We've heard the first part of it, so it's really good stuff. And your partner Mike Krukow was on the podcast as well with Brett Boone earlier this week.
Oh, cool! Yeah. Well, it sounds like a fun podcast, so
no
I had fun with it.
No doubt. We'll have fun today at Dodger Stadium. Giants and Dodgers. Matos getting his first crack at the Dodgers. It's always fun when the Giants and Dodgers get together. It's an important series, as you said, John. So thanks for the time today. Have a great weekend down there in L.A.
7:10 first pitch, and all the best. Thank you.
All the best. Have fun down there in the City of Angels. John Miller, been a play-by-play voice since 1997